Welcome to the Bookers Alliance podcast, where we hold the pencil and the pencil is power. Coming at you right now is your host, Marky Mark, along with the man, the myth, the legend, Frank Donaldson. Join us as we discuss the ever-changing landscape of professional wrestling. So hang on tight, you jabronis, and enjoy the ride. Hey, welcome in, everybody. Pull yourself a ringside seat right up to the apron here, and we are going to talk about the 2023 Hall of Fame class that is going into WrestleMania 39 weekend. We are excited. We're on that road. We're traveling as fast as we can. How we doing today, Frank?
Oh, so good, so good. I mean, I believe this episode is going to air after the actual event, so by that point, I'll be exhausted and tired. So we got to get some stuff in the can for you guys here now. So we really want to talk about Hall of Fame. I'm really excited for this year's small class, a very small class this year. You know, we're used to seeing 7-8 people go in and have a 4 to 5 hour ceremony. Doesn't look like we're going to have that this year, which I'm all happy about.
Absolutely. So. I think the shorter this goes, the better it is.
Oh, yeah.
Poor old Hillbilly Jim wouldn't have made it in this format.
My goodness, man. What about Mr. T? Do you remember that?
Hey, but he got his mama in.
I mean, Mr. T loves his mama.
He loves his mama.
That man loves his mama. But I mean, my goodness, he loved his mama for about 2 hours
Absolutely.
out there. But, I mean, hey, but a heartfelt speech, he gave it. But yeah, some of those speeches, they can pick those up in the back. They can put them online. We can read them.
Yeah. So with that, let's give you the quick rundown of this year's class. We have Andy Kaufman, Stacy Keibler, the Great Muta, and Rey Mysterio Jr. So that is our 2023 inductees.
Oh, that's an astounding class. Anybody out there want to guess what name is sticking out for me right now?
Batista.
So he should have been in it.
He should have been here.
It's a Hollywood year. He was already set to be inducted. Apparently, they had tried to get him in there, but his Hollywood schedule wouldn't let him. He's big time Hollywood now, he couldn't get away for an hour or so. But why not? Hey, why not?
All right, so we're gonna break these down and talk about each of the inductees. But before we do that, let's give a congratulatory toast here, if you will, sir. Some good old liquid refreshment.
Cheers.
Cheers to you, sir, and absolutely.
Happy class anniversary.
All right. So we're going to kick off today's discussion with the funny man, Andy Kaufman. Frank, what you remember about Andy Kaufman?
Oh, my goodness. So Taxi. I mean, what does everybody remember about Andy Kaufman? If you're not a big-time wrestling fan, if you're not a historian, kind of like we are, me are.
Yeah, no, I'm not a historian. I'll go on and confess that.
Yeah, if you're not like that, then I mean, you still know who Andy Kaufman is. Taxi was Latka from Taxi. I mean, the accent, the voice, the mannerisms. The guy was hilarious. He was just funny and. Various documentaries Jerry the King Lawler's done. He just did one on A&E, but he's done numerous documentaries and interviews about Andy. And he just said Andy was a fan. He was just a huge wrestling fan, and he just wanted to get involved with the business to help it grow. And I mean, nobody can say that he didn't do that. I mean, he put his body on the line, literally and figuratively, to get wrestling over. And I mean, he's still remembered to this day. I was actually surprised when they nominated him that he wasn't already in the celebrity wing of the Hall of Fame. Seems like he would have been in there, but I guess part of me, as far as Andy's concerned, is kind of sad that, Jerry won't be able to induct him, with Jerry's health conditions, prayers still going up to Jerry.
Absolutely.
But, having him be able to speak on Andy's behalf would have been awesome, but getting him in while the King's still able to see it and appreciate it, that's well worth it.
Yeah, and I think for those who may not know who Andy Kaufman is,
you're listening to the wrong podcast.
I think Andy Kaufman was he pushed that first kind of generational envelope, if you will, on stand-up comedy and what it is. Right about that same time as George Carlin, all those guys, Richard Pryor, when those guys were kind of hammering it in. The thing about Andy Kaufman is if you ever have a chance to listen to some of his stand-up, you did not know if this dude was playing around or if, he sold it to the ninth degree. I mean,
the characters he portrayed. I mean, And, some of the younger viewers out there that might be listening, not familiar with Andy, kind of like Marky Mark said, there's a movie out, Jim Carrey starring it called Man in the Moon. It's basically the biography of Andy Kaufman. Gives a lot of good information, but I just remember some of the characters that they said he played. I mean, it was just like the wrestling, like you were saying. He didn't, there was no line, there was no, this is the character, this is the guy. I mean, he was the character. Whatever character he was intended to play at the time, he immersed himself in 100%. He was all in, balls to the wall, as they say.
Yeah, and true to form, just like most comedians are finding out today, whether you agree or disagree, his stick wouldn't have made it today.
No.
It wouldn't have flown. I mean, when he first got into the wrestling biz, I mean, his thing was wrestling women and telling them that they needed to be in the kitchen cooking and barefoot and pregnant. I mean, that was Andy Kaufman.
I mean, that was his gimmick. That was it. And then, then he had Jerry the King Lawler down in Memphis that was going to stand up against this crazy, wacky Hollywood type comedian and all. But yeah, like you said, his gimmick, it is antiquated, but I mean, for that time, even then it was offensive, but it wasn't the offensive it is now. Like today, Andy Kaufman would have been canceled so many times over.
Absolutely.
They would have had to reinvent the word canceled for him or add an extra L in it or something.
It'd been Kaufmaned.
Exactly. I mean, it would have been, but again, that's all the comedians of that particular era.
Yeah.
Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, none of them could do what they did, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s today. I mean, unfortunately so. That's why I'm this close to being canceled as well, but we're holding on here. That's why we're staying PG-13 here at the worst, PG-13, so I don't get canceled.
So the one thing that, of course, everybody remembers about Andy Kaufman is the late night with David Letterman, the sit-down that him and Jerry the King Lawler had on there, and where things appeared to get a little too real.
Well, that's how they appeared, but you watch the documentary, Jerry the King said flat out, hey, they want us to do kind of this thing and promote the wrestling, and Jerry apologizes, blah blah blah. But Jerry said Andy called him one-on-one, outside of the show, the producers and all that, and said, hey, let's do something, let's make this memorable. And that they did. I mean, again, he put his body out there, completely told Jerry, slap the hell out of me, and for lack of a better term, slap the hell out of me right on national TV. And he did. And Andy went flailing out of the chair, fell backwards and neck brace. And if you didn't know, so this is way before kayfabe was known and, all the behind the scenes things about wrestling were out there. This is when the mystery was still there about wrestling, and it was easy to think some of that stuff was real. So when you saw Jerry slap the hell out of Andy Kaufman and Andy Kaufman go flailing, I mean, you thought that was real.
Well, even David Letterman sitting right there beside him thought it was
real.
Yeah,
because he called his security hey, this guy done went crazy out here. And there's been other instances of it. More recently, well, not recently for us, but, in between that, you had Vader overseas where he got into an altercation with a news guy that was kind of calling it fake, and Vader got up and kind of roughed him up a little bit, told him, I'll show you what fake is. And Hulk Hogan did the same thing. He went on a talk show with, matter of fact, I think it was a Saturday Night Live character that just recently passed, but Hogan went on there and did the same thing, put him in a front face lock to show him, I'll show you, but Hulk Hogan 6'8", 300 pounds. This guy's 170 pounds soaking wet.
Yeah.
Hogan put him in an easy enough front face lock, but that guy passed out, and then tried to sue and everything. So, everybody listening is going to be a fan enough. Otherwise, you didn't randomly find us to listen to. You're a fan of wrestling. So you get the kayfabe and all that, but back then it wasn't like that. Everybody didn't know.
Protecting the business.
Protecting. I mean, and Jerry protected the hell out of it that day.
Sure did.
He didn't pull that punch. I mean, they always talk about Jerry the King's punches, are some of the greatest looking working punches in the business.
Yep.
But he worked that day. He slapped the hell out of Andy Kaufman. Real life. There wasn't no movie magic going on or anything. That was real.
Yeah.
And Andy didn't have to put effort forth to sell it, but he sold it because, like you said, he slapped the hell out of Andy.
But and it's unfortunate that Andy's life was cut short. Just the fact that it's always weird when you have to see somebody go in there after the fact.
Yeah.
You would like to see somebody get their flowers while they're alive.
Yeah.
But
hell, when Andy died, though, WWF wasn't even a WWF at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, he went really early. Like he was like, I think there was still Vince Sr. So, at that point it was territories and there was no crossover. So unfortunately he never could have gotten a WWF Hall of Fame, acknowledgement back in those days, but it's good that he's getting it now. I mean, he's definitely deserving, as far as a character, as far as his contributions to the business, definitely worth it, definitely deserved.
Absolutely. So let's move on to our next entrant, the one, the only Miss She's Got Legs.
All right.
Miss Stacy Keibler.
All right. Now here's a topic that I can sell right on into here. If we hadn't already cracked these drinks, I'd say let's crack them now, but I'm going to have to drink one because we're going to have to cool it off in here.
Yeah, So Miss Stacy Keibler, she had her first run, from what I remember, in WCW.
Yep.
Before coming on over to WWE.
Yep.
And
Miss Hancock.
Miss Hancock was her
Hancock. Yes.
Oh, now come on, family friendly.
That was her name. I mean, Miss Hancock.
PG, you gotta walk that line.
It was named. She was named that for a reason. I mean, they know what they would do. Let me ask you though, quick history tip. Do you know how Stacy got her big break in WCW? I remember because see the look on his face. He's mad as hell.
She had a legal pad. That's all I remember.
So that was her gimmick. But I mean, how did they find her? Where did she come from?
Was she a Hooters girl?
Wow, no.
I don't know.
So Stacy was not known for her Hooters. She was a legs. She was a leg. She was dark meat. She wasn't white meat. But no. So Stacy was actually in the crowd with her quote unquote boyfriend at the time. She had been a Baltimore Ravens cheerleader. And her boyfriend suggested that they go to the wrestling event, because he said, hey, this may be something here. And they went to the wrestling event. And, Eric Bischoff, with those peering eyes of his, he was out there scanning the crowd through the cameras and all that. Somehow or another caught a glimpse of Stacy Keibler and said, hey, we need to go back to that woman over there, and they panned back to her. And before you know, they approached her after the event. And next thing you know, we got Stacy Keibler.
Yeah, this was definitely before the days of the women's wrestling era as we know it right now.
Oh, especially in WCW. They never had a women's wrestling division.
No. So this was before the end. So unfortunately, Stacy Keibler is not known for her wrestling prowess, from in the ring there.
For her what?
Wrestling prowess. No.
Did she wrestle?
Yeah, a couple times.
For what? I mean, my bad.
A couple times.
Sorry, I'm distracted. If anybody did need to wrestle, she was fine not wrestling.
So as she kind of came on into WWE there, she was also known as the Duchess of Dudleyville.
Yeah. You saw the picture today too.
Yes.
That was a nice picture. Anybody who needs to know what picture we're talking about, just check it out. Just look up the Duchess of Dudleyville. I think Bubba Ray from Busted Open posted that picture today, and my goodness, I don't think I've seen belts placed in a better position since Mandy Rose. Oh yeah, there we go. Got to get our Mandy Rose from plug in.
But the thing was though is in that era where popular opinion or unpopular opinion, the women were eye candy, and that's how she was basically presented to the wrestling universe. She was a manager, valet, however you want to put it. But
she was hot.
Well, see, that was the thing, is even her theme song kind of just they leaned into it. I mean,
you
had to. She was undeniable.
Let's be honest. She knew she wasn't a in-ring competitor. They knew she wasn't an in-ring competitor. When they were signing that contract, I 100% promise you they weren't saying, you'll be women's champion by XYZ. No. They were thinking, my goodness, you put this woman on television, men 18 to 35 will be turning their TVs on faster than we can get the damn channel on the show on the channel. Men over 35 will be drooling at the TV. We're of that age now, so we understand. If Stacy Keibler was coming on the TV at 8 o'clock, I'd be in front of the TV at 7:30,
waiting.
Absolutely. That wouldn't miss a beat. No.
But also Stacy Keibler is known for one of the best GIF appearances with the one, the only Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Yeah.
So
her interview segment.
And when she gets up on that desk there with them legs, and Vince just well, we know there might have been some realism to it now for what we know about Vince.
Vince took the Andy Kaufman bump. I mean, he fell backwards in his chair too, but I ain't mad at him. I mean, even watching that back now, it's all over the internet now that she's been announced to go into the Hall of Fame because that's probably one of her most memorable segments.
Yeah.
I mean, even watching it back now, was that 20 years later?
Yeah.
Woo, that wasn't a bad segment.
She had airtime every TV.
That ain't all she had, sir. That ain't all she had.
All right, so we could talk for as long as the day.
Yeah, that's a whole nother episode. Yeah,
about Stacey
that's another episode. We'll revisit at another day. But yeah, that's another episode.
So we will move on to our next entrant into this year's Hall of Fame, which is the Great Muta.
The Great Muta.
The great Japanese export.
Yeah, the Great Muta, who never wrestled a single minute of WWE programming, but was still good enough or great enough of a crossover talent from Japan to get his induction, get his flowers, as you said earlier. So definitely worthwhile.
So I think, and we've talked about this before, the WWE Hall of Fame, it's not really WWE. It's Wrestling Hall of Fame. Yeah. There's not another Wrestling Hall of Fame out there that is as big and prominent. I do know what Impact had its Hall of Fame at one point.
Wow. That out of all the Hall of Fames that actually exist out there, Impact that was the one
I bring up. Yep.
Okay, so they nominated what? They had 3 people during the end of the Dixie Carter. I don't know if they've inducted anybody since.
No,
I think they did Ken Shamrock a couple years ago because they had somehow or other they got The Rock to do a video.
They did do Ken Shamrock. You're right.
Yeah, they did do. But and so again, history. This ain't your world, so I'll dive in here. But there is another. Well, there's a couple other Hall of Fames, but there's another prominent one. I think I told you about it before. The Cauliflower Alley Club. Yeah. So that's actually a big time wrestling Hall of Fame for all of wrestling.
Right.
Dates back. It predates the WWE Hall of Fame. Hell, it predates the WWE. But, and a lot of wrestlers say, it's really a great honor to be inducted because, it's strictly of your peers. It's not, like we know the WWE Hall of Fame, that's kind of one man's, idea of who should go and his reason and why and all that, which is cool because it's his business,
right.
It's his product. But the Cauliflower Alley Club is more peer related, where they have a committee who inducts these people based on criteria and things like that. So as far as, I don't know, credo I guess you want to call it, the Cauliflower Alley Club probably carries more of that. But at the end of the day, hell, you've been a wrestling fan for umpteen years. You didn't even know it existed until recently.
Yep.
I only know it existed from a lot of magazine reading back in the day and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, the big time Hall of Fame, even though there's no physical building yet, is the WWE Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Being able to say that you're inducted into that is, it's saying that you are at the pinnacle of your business.
And I think, hopefully a lot of people don't have hang-ups of, well, he's never wrestled in WWE. Why is he going to WWE Hall of Fame? All I've got to tell you is if you were a fan in the 80s, in the early 90s, you knew who Great Muta was.
Yeah.
That was Sting, one of Sting's biggest adversaries. That crossover that WCW was doing with Japan at the time. Seeing this dude come over who was just quick as lightning.
Yeah.
Or as JR would say, quicker than a hiccup.
All right. All the dog.
So the face paint. The mist that he spewed from his mouth. Yep. I mean, that was just some of those things you didn't see.
Yeah. Which the mist wasn't his creation. I mean, I can scan back to Killer Khan from way back in the WWF days who used to do the mist and the big knee drop off the top rope. I wonder what happened to Killer Khan. Don't know when we'll talk about that guy again, but he came up today. But yeah, I mean, like you said, if you were a wrestling fan, somehow or another, you heard about Great Muta back in the day. There, he may have been, only crossing over in the WCW at the time, but his name had crossed over everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
and he had legendary feuds in in New Japan.
Yeah.
So it's not like, WCW was the only time anybody ever saw him wrestle.
Yeah. If you're really young and you're like, man, I got to go look up the Great Muta stuff, think Tajiri. Just, maybe 10 years earlier than what Tajiri was. But, I mean, Tajiri stole his entire gimmick from that.
And then going into today, Asuka. Yep. Asuka is the Great Muta made over.
Absolutely.
I mean, the face paint, the mist, it's all there. But some of the moves that he did, the handspring, and some of the martial arts moves.
Way before his time.
Yeah, way before his time. But also to see this man go out the way he's gone out, as wrestling all over the world one more time, giving everybody one more show of the Great Muta, and then hanging his boots up against his final biggest adversary of Sting. It's just, what better way could you ask to go out?
Yeah, I mean, especially for American fans, that kind of gives you all you can handle in one fell swoop. You get your Sting, even if you weren't the biggest Great Muta fan, you were probably a big time Sting fan if you were watching wrestling back in the day. Because, I mean, who wasn't? Let's be honest. In WWF at the time, you could say, well, I'm a Hogan fan, but not really a Warrior fan, or vice versa. Or, I'm a Bret Hart fan, but not really the old guys fan, stuff like that. But if you watched and enjoyed WCW, you were a fan of Sting.
Yep.
That's a whole other episode. That may be a string episode.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, if you were watching WCW, you were a fan of Sting because Sting was the hottest thing going in that promotion, bar none. Nobody else holds the candle or holds that torch for WCW like Sting did. So, you gave your American fans that, and then you give all your Japanese fans Great Muta's retirement match. Come on now. I mean, you're getting all you can handle in one barrel there.
Yeah. And how much of a lucky son of a gun was Darby Allin to be right there
in
the middle of it, dude.
Hey, guilty
right
by
place,
association.
right time.
Exactly. I mean, like you said, ride that coattail all the way out.
Yep. All right, so we're going to move on to our last entrant into the 2023 Hall of Fame, and this is Mr. Booyaka Booyaka.
All right.
Rey Mysterio
619.
Jr. So Rey Mysterio Jr. holds a special place in my heart as a wrestling fan, because seeing him come in, just like Muta did in WCW, seeing him come in that crossover and looking at this guy going, holy crap, I've never seen anybody do that in a ring.
Yeah.
He just had moves that you didn't think of, you didn't think were possible. You were like, I've never seen a gymnast do something like that.
No. He was, talk about before his time. I mean, could you imagine a 25-year-old Rey Mysterio today?
Oh, we just saw him. It was Vikingo.
There you go. So, and I was just getting ready to say that, the AEW match with Kenny Omega and Vikingo the other day was awesome for those same type of reasons that you just said. I mean, Vikingo was doing things that he learned from Rey Mysterio. He only could have learned from Rey Mysterio because nobody else was doing that kind of stuff back then. You had other guys doing some of it, but not all of it. Rey was able to capitalize on all that stuff, better than we had seen to that point, better than we're seeing now. I mean, Rey in 97, 98, guys today couldn't touch him now.
No.
I mean, then you got a lot of spot guys out there, your Omegas, your Bucks, AJ Styles and all that. I would love to see 25, 26-year-old Rey against those guys today. But the fact is that Rey could still hang with all those guys in the ring today.
Yeah.
And, and
that's what the crazy part.
46, I think. He is so a little bit older than me, but he's still able to hang with them. I cut the grass earlier today, and I feel like I'm going to die, right? Rey's out there still putting on, awesome matches to this day.
Yep.
Geared up again, like we said, we're recording before WrestleMania, regardless when it airs. He's geared up to fight his son, and in a match that it isn't going to be like Ric Flair's last match where he kind of has to be carried through.
This dude can still go
by his blood, or by his son-in-law. Rey's going to put it's for his son. It's to put his son on the map.
Yep.
Rey's going to put on probably the best performance we've seen out of him since he won the the big gold belt back at WrestleMania 22, which I was there in the archives.
So Rey Mysterio, a couple things instantaneously come to mind. One of the first things that come to mind with Rey Mysterio is his feud with Eddie Guerrero.
Oh yeah,
legendary feud.
Absolutely.
And if you're watching the A&E specials about the rivalries, in my mind, there's no bigger rivalry that Rey Mysterio had than with Eddie Guerrero.
No, that it made him. I mean, and they were both coming up at that time. They were both kind of making a name for themselves, but obviously Eddie had progressed a lot farther than Rey did at that point, by name value and in ring time as well. Eddie was a lot older than Rey was, so he had been in the ring for many years when Rey was still, stuck in a bottle when Eddie was in the ring. I mean, Eddie had been in the ring since forever. So Eddie was coming up, and he was able to elevate Rey Mysterio right up to his level to give him a dance partner that could actually hang with him. So, Eddie didn't have to look so out of place in WCW and being a smaller guy that could do all this fast stuff, but wanted to, didn't want to relegate himself to the cruiserweight division. Eddie was a United States heavyweight champion. He wanted to be that guy, and he wasn't going to be able to get there wrestling the Lex Lugers and the Hulk Hogans and the Kevin Nashes because he wasn't going to beat them guys, but he had a guy and they couldn't keep up with him. I mean, let's be honest. Yeah. But he got a guy in there that not only could keep up with him, but challenged him to keep up. And that was Rey Mysterio, so it elevated Rey beyond levels working with Eddie. To whereas all the big name talent said, hey, we want to work with that guy. That guy's amazing. We got to get him in our segment somehow or another. Yeah, we want to go over him because we're WCW and that's what we do, but he'll make us look like $1 million on the way. So, hey, what can you say?
So the other thing that immediately comes to mind with Rey Mysterio is him being lawn darted into the side of the production truck.
I was thinking that as I was talking about that. Man. So not necessarily what he wants to be remembered for, I'm sure. But again, memorable segment. I mean, you got 7 foot of Kevin Nash. Like you said, throwing that guy like a javelin into the side of a trailer. My God, I mean, that poor guy looked like he was dead when it happened. And then there ain't nowhere to go. The trailer don't have no give. No. Neither does the concrete that fell on.
It was all hit, all sound. Oh, yeah. It was
just one of those things like, hey, it'll happen. Hopefully it'll benefit me somewhere down the road, which it did.
Yep.
But if it didn't, then he would probably be looked at as one of the most foolish people in all of wrestling for doing that. But hey, it worked.
The other things about Rey Mysterio that I remember very dearly, the outfits, his costumes were always top notch. Every Mania, whether it was a superhero, whether it was a villain, whether it was a comic book character. I mean,
he hit them all.
Oh, it was amazing. Some of the outfits.
Did his own original outfits. When he first came in, before he was doing the cosplay kind of things. His own outfits. I mean, they were excited. They were colorful, flashy. They matched him because, I mean, with his moveset and things like that. Rey Mysterio was a brand. I mean, he was a brand that is going to outlive him by far. I mean,
absolutely.
Rey Mysterio will be talked about after Dominic Mysterio retires. They'll still be talking about Rey Mysterio.
But I mean, when you look out at the crowd and you see all the little kids wearing the masks, I mean, it's just his reach is incredible.
Yeah.
But the one thing about Rey Mysterio, going back to his roots, his history, and that lucha libre that style of wrestling, that style of wrestling, I think he exposed us, the U.S., into that style.
Yeah, big time.
So even though when we saw him, like we were saying, we were watching him and going, holy crap, I've never seen anybody do a move like that. Well, if you had grown up in Mexico and watched Lucha Libre, those were standard moves.
Yeah.
So his importance to me as a fan, but not only just my opinion into the wrestling culture, he exposed us to Lucha Libre wrestling.
Yeah, he opened the door to a lot of other styles of wrestling that people weren't ready to accept, kind of the same way the Great Muta did. I mean, so it's if you're looking at this particular class, based on everybody we talked about, all of these people in this year's class were door openers. They opened the door for wrestling to something that people over here hadn't been exposed to. Again, Andy Kaufman bought Hollywood in. I mean, he was the first big-time Hollywood person to acknowledge wrestling. Stacy was, I mean, for as beautiful as she was, again, not to be in ring, but she exposed the business. She exposed the business when she got on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah.
She took, her little star that had been, shining pretty bright in the WWE and just exploded. She blew herself up. And of course, WWE always gets that rub off of it because it's one of their stars.
Right.
And then Buddha and Rey Mysterio exposed us all to, overseas wrestling styles that we'd never seen before. The Japanese style, the Mexican style. My God, think about what wrestling would be now had we not had those two guys introduce us to those styles.
Yep.
It'd be bland and it would be the old formulaic wrestling that it used to be. But those guys with their move sets and their, and their speed and things like that, it just made everybody say, hey, there's a lot going on around the world that we need to check out. You got to investigate. You found yourself looking to find more information, more videotapes about these guys because they were so amazing.
Yep. So that kind of wraps us up here with our conversation about the 2023 Hall of Fame class. Congratulations are in order to everybody who is being inducted. It is one of my favorite events of the year.
Absolutely.
And it also helps when the person that's going is, they're there to accept it on stage, to kind of see them get their flowers while they can. It's always amazing.
Pomp and circumstance they put behind it. You know, I know somebody was saying earlier, it's just a big ceremony, a little payday. You get yourself a class ring or whatever, and it just kind of is what it is. And for those of us who've never been a part of it, it may look like that to some of you all out there listening on the outside, but from the inside, when you're involved in it, you got all those people out there cheering your name. And for a lot of the guys, that's their last run. That's it. That's really your last hit in wrestling. It's definitely a special moment. I'm glad, like you said, for the ones that are here to accept their award, I'm glad they're going to get that honor and reverence for themselves for that night.
Yep, and the day that the WWE finally go on and decide to actually make this a real facility, the WWE Hall of Fame. We're going to be there at Road Trip. Definitely, we will do a podcast from there.
We'll have a live episode on grand opening day.
Absolutely,
if they erect a building. And where a physical Hall of Fame, I will see that physical Hall of Fame, if not the day they open it up, very, very soon after.
All right, so as we wrap it up here, feel free to drop us a line on all of our social media platforms, your thoughts about this year's class. How did they make an impact on you as a fan? What do you remember from this year's inductees?
Young boys out there, don't tell us how Stacey made an impact on you.
Let's skip that part.
Let's just we don't have to show our appreciation. We get it. We know. We understand. Keep it PG, guys. Keep it PG.
All right. With that, everybody, we appreciate you listening to the Bookers Alliance podcast, and we bid you adieu.
PG.
Today's podcast was produced by SBP. You can find our podcast on all major podcast platforms. Also connect with us on our social media accounts. Search for the Bookers Alliance on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.